Well, good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to the Digital Empowerment Project, Module 2 on live streaming events, tours, and programs. This topic has become very important in this past year, so we're delighted to have you with us today. The Digital Empowerment Project is a nationwide initiative organized by the 6 U.S. regional museum associations dedicated to providing free, self-paced training resources focused on digital media and technology for small museums. This series of online webinars and toolkits is made possible by funding from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. My name is Dan Yeager, and I'm the Executive Director of the New England Museum Association. My pronouns are in the he series, and I'm a white male with gray hair pulled back and a close-cropped salt and pepper beard, and I'm wearing round black-rimmed eyeglasses. Today I'm wearing a blue-collared shirt under a black V-neck sweater, and I'm sitting in front of a large bookcase full of books and assorted knickknacks from my home office. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the places in which we gather. In this era of virtual meetings, when digital places may substitute our physical sense of place, it's important to reflect on the land we each occupy and honor the indigenous people who have called it home. I'm speaking to you from Swampscott, Massachusetts, the historical homelands of the Massachusetts peoples. Wherever we are, let us acknowledge all indigenous nations as living communities, their elders, both past and present, as well as future generations. We, the Digital Empowerment Project team, recognize that our organizations and those of our members were founded within a colonizing society that perpetuated the exclusions and erasures of many Native peoples throughout the United States and beyond. We ask you to reflect on the place where you reside and work, and to respect the diversity of cultures and experiences that form the richness of our world and our profession. Thank you. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce the speakers for today's peer-to-peer introductory session, Get Inspired, Ross Stanton Jordan and Christie McMillan. Ross is the interim director and curatorial director of the Jane Addams Hull House Museum in Chicago, Illinois, interested in the confluence of politics, history, and visual culture. In his position, Ross supports the production of exhibitions and programs that connect the social justice issues of the past to the present, via collaboration with artists who work with the community. Christie is the Director of Learning and Engagement at the Asheville Art Museum in Asheville, North Carolina. Christie plans and implements programs for college age through older adults, including tours, talks, classes, films, performances, travel, and more. She also oversees the Learning and Engagement team, internship, and docent programs, and has particular interests in interpretation, accessibility, collaboration, and technology. We're so grateful for offering their experiences and insights today. Please join me in welcoming Ross Stanton Jordan and Christie McMillan. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for that introduction. I think I'm first here. Waiting for my screen share, but my name is Ross Jordan. I want to thank the Museum Learning Hub and the Association of Midwestern Museums for the invite to talk today. I also want to say that I'm a Black man. I have dark glasses on, and I have a white background with a etching behind me. Let me get the share screen up. There we go. Perfect. My name is Ross Jordan. I go by his and him. I'm the interim director and cultural manager of Jane Addams Hull House Museum. And the museum is part of the College of Architecture, Art, and Design at the University of Illinois, Chicago. The museum is a dynamic memorial to international peace activists and feminist Jane Addams and the other social reformers who worked alongside their immigrant neighbors to create social change on the northwest side of Chicago. For her work, Jane Addams was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1931. And other social reformers at Hull House were doing what Jane Addams called socializing democracy. In the most congested and marginalized neighborhood of Chicago, during the largest influx of immigrants in US history, reformers experimented with new forms of social good. So this included developing well baby clinics, kindergartens, playgrounds, the Juvenile Justice Center, and some of the first kind of interventions of this kind in the country, certainly in Chicago. They protected immigrants' wages, agitated for workers' rights to unionize, and provided adult education classes and language learning in outside of the local factories in the area. Hull House co-founder, Ellen Gates Starr, was determined to provide access to the arts for populations that were often deemed undeserving. So Hull House's first building was an art gallery that was followed by a 300-seat theater, a kilns, a bookbinding studio. At its height, Hull House served 10,000 people per week in its 13-building complex. The museum is located on 2 of the remaining buildings, so you can actually see one here, which is called the Hull House Home, and the Residence Dining Hall, which is just adjacent to this building. I'm saying all this to make a point that 90% of the power of our museum and the work that we do is really harnessing the power of place and site to tell the stories of the men and women who fought for democracy in the early third of the 20th century. And COVID-19, of course, closed our site, and it removed our primary resource for sharing this important kind of history, which is the site itself. And we're still closed to this day. This is an image of Jane Addams riding down Michigan Avenue in Chicago in front of the Art Institute Museum. This is during the 1912 Republican Convention. And you can see the Votes for Women flag draped on the door of this car, and Jane Addams is in the front seat there. In anticipation of the 2020 suffrage centennial, and Jane Addams, of course, was one of the premier suffragists of her time, we were anticipating that and opened up exhibitions and programs in 2019 to begin to talk about that history and Jane Addams' particular role. We opened up 2 exhibitions in 2019 in the fall. This is Why Women Should Vote, which is based on a 1910 essay by Jane Addams. This exhibition explored the widespread kind of grassroots national movement organized by American women to demand the right to vote. We also put up True Peace, which is based on a quote by Jane Addams. True peace is not merely the absence of war, but the presence of justice. And it spotlighted the kind of the international work that women did against or to to build a peace movement during World War I. That exhibition also featured 2 contemporary artists, Monica Trinidad and Sarah G. And so we were really off to a good start, we thought, in 2019 with these exhibition series. And of course, that would change. So I'm setting this up here. We also opened up public tours and family programs and events in 2019. So in January 2020, we launched a Centennial Suffrage Series called With You or Not at All, which is focused on the history and the role of race and suffrage movement in partnership with Francis Willard Museum and the Northwestern University Museum, or Northwestern University. This series raised questions about telling the history of suffrage and race and the role that played in those battles. And the title of the program series, With You or Not at All, is an excerpt from a quote from journalist and anti-lynching activist Ida B. Wells, who founded the NAACP with Jane Addams. And Wells refused to be relegated to a back of an important national suffrage parade in 1913, and she said she would walk with her white counterparts or she wouldn't walk at all. So our first public program, a part of the suffrage series, was with Michelle Duster. You can see her on your screen now, and she is an author and an advocate, but also the great-granddaughter of Ida B. Wells. And so she spoke in a very site, which is the Residence Dining Hall at Hull House, which is the image you're seeing on the screen right now, at a place where her great-grandmother herself might have actually spoken. And so really our site does connect these kinds of legacies in a really concrete way. And So COVID did close our doors, and it kind of kept us from doing these specific things. But since we had already opened a suffrage exhibit, we had this really vibrant suffrage series, public series happening in slated programs in 2019. It started in 2020 and really was going into March when we began to close. We were one of the few museums and one of the few kind of sites in Chicago that had an open exhibition and had a ready program series when we began to close down because of COVID. And so a few partners began to reach out for us because we had content that was available, we had exhibitions that were up. We received emergency funds from the Chair Foundation of American Art that helped us deal with some of our unpublished videos online. And that was actually really exciting. And we also decided to kind of build out a new YouTube channel with our friends from Ative, which is on the screen. This is all our partners that helped us kind of get back into place after our closure. And we also reached out to suburban libraries. So these are libraries that were kind of farther away from, whoa. See here, I'm jumping ahead here. They were a little bit farther away. These are audiences that wouldn't necessarily have access to Whole House. They weren't driving into Whole House to see us on a regular basis. But these libraries reached out to the museum because we had content, we had our exhibition up, and they said, well, we would normally be producing our own exhibitions, but we can't because of COVID. We would normally be developing our own public programs. We can't because of COVID. And so these library partners basically allowed us to implement some programming that we wouldn't be able to do ourselves, but also allowed us to reach a broader audience that wouldn't come to our specific historic site to access us directly on a regular basis. So this partnership really was about reaching out to new audiences and helping to fill the gaps in the programming for these public libraries. So these are some of the suffrage public programs that we planned with our library partners this would be fall of 2020, that we wouldn't really have able to been produced in the same way. And they also helped us with a virtual tour, a self-guided tour that included audio components and visual components that really enhanced and again allowed people to actually come back to our site and walk through it on their own, which is something that we wouldn't even think of doing without COVID happening and kind of not allowing us to do what we wanted to do with our public tours. So we both now give kind of virtual tours with this thing, and then also can just invite people to come and into their classroom and use this tool in their classroom whenever they want to. So we've had lots of outreach from international sites that know of Whole House that can't come here but can use our virtual tour as a way to kind of guide them through our historic site and put them back in touch with that history. And then our library partnership really gave us kind of a inspiration to do a little bit more than we normally would. Just before the election, about a month out, we were lucky enough to have Representative Lauren Underwood, who was the first millennial and the youngest Black woman to serve in Congress. She serves in the Naperville district, just west of our location in Chicago. And this is a public program. We were able to screen a film that was about her campaign in 2018, her historic campaign in 2018, but also have her presence virtually. And of course, we were playing this program outside of COVID, but it didn't seem possible to do. But because of people's new availability and our partnerships and the virtual capabilities that they had and brought to our programs, we were able to have her, even given her limited schedule because of her own campaigning. So that was kind of a big, I lost my thing here. One exciting, I guess, outcome of that partnership. And then I'll share these last two clips that kind of set us up where we are now. And I think, Jason, you're gonna have to help me with that first slide there, that first clip. of that man sitting down, if you want to play
I
that
dream
one.
of a world beyond the white avant-garde, way beyond the Western canon, a supernova of possibilities. And I invite you, dear foreigner in my performance country, to dream with me and send me your own letters imagining a better art world, or rather, a myriad art worlds coexisting in synergy with nature, radical imagination, and community. You're surrounding multiple communities. Do you have ideas to propose for a museum of the future? Please send them to the following email address.
So this is performance artist, which is performance artist Gomez Pena, who's worked in San Francisco and Chicago for many years. And we're now partnering with a radio partner, Lumpen Radio, which is a local radio station in Chicago, broadcasting his weekly radio program. And he's also doing this video call for people to send in their visions and ideas for the future of museums. And of course, the challenge that we have right now, museums are really struggling to figure out how they respond to the calls for cultural and structural change. And his call was a part of that. And of course, this radio project is really great while the museum is closed because it gives us access, it lets us kind of access more audiences, different kinds of audiences than we otherwise would. And we wouldn't, of course, enter into a radio partnership if it hadn't been for COVID kind of exposing us to other partners that we could work with and other artists we could work with that we wouldn't otherwise have access to. I think there's one more clip of the radio show. Jason, do you want to pull that one up?
Dear cibernautas, orphan children of two or more culturas, identities y cuerpos, welcome to an impromptu conceptual experiment, an attempt to reinvent ourselves in times of pandemia, to bring performance poetry, audio art, and critical thinking to our everyday lives in forced lockdown, to turn our homes into techno performance laboratories, and to cross geographical borders with our cyber bodies. Tonight, Gómez Peña, servidor, is unplugged, uncensored, thinking out loud. You are about to hear a selection of my audio art curated by our colleagues at Lumpen Radio Chicago, broadcasting from Bridgeport, the community of the future. Disclaimer: if you disagree with the content, please cover your eyes and ears. You can also turn off your computer or simply walk away. But don't call me out. Instead, practice your civic will. Enough. Escuchemos.
So I was at the end here that as a historic site, I think when I got to Whole House, I was really focused on leveraging that history and the place. But I think COVID has really taught me that our audience needs other ways to kind of access that history beyond showing up at our site. And partnerships that we were able to kind of advance during this last year have been inspirational in trying to find ways to reach different audiences with the history and the artists that we work with. Thanks a lot.
Hi. Thanks so much to the Museum Learning Hub and to Zinnia Willits at the Southeast Museums Conference for the invitation to participate today. I'm a white female with short blonde hair, blue eyes, dark frame eyeglasses, and I'm sitting in my office at the museum today. I use she, her pronouns. I'd like to start with a little background on our institution so that you out there can draw parallels or compare differences with your own unique situations. The Asheville Art Museum is located in beautiful downtown Asheville, North Carolina, which is nestled in a picturesque valley in the Blue Ridge Mountains. With a population of over 90,000 inhabitants and over 10 million tourists per year, Asheville is the urban center of the largely rural 24-county Western North Carolina region, which is situated upon the ancient Southern Appalachian ancestral homeland of the Cherokee people and the present-day home of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. The museum is an independent 501c3 nonprofit organization. We collect and exhibit American art of the 20th and 21st centuries, both from the United States at large and art of significance to Western North Carolina and Southern Appalachia. Our collection is comprised of over 6,000 objects in a wide range of media, including fine art, decorative art, traditional arts, and craft. Our budget of about $2.5 million per year supports 18 to 20 full-time and 10 to 15 part-time staff. When not in the midst of a global pandemic, we welcome about 100 to 150,000 visitors per year. From 2016 to 2019, the museum was closed for a major expansion and renovation. We had our grand reopening in November 2019, only to close again in March 2020, like most of you, due to COVID-19. The state of North Carolina allowed museums to reopen in September of 2020. Today, I'll be talking about our Third Thursday program. After reopening our new museum facility, we began establishing a normal suite of exhibitions and programming. We were building educational offerings for adult audiences on our weekly Thursday late open nights and didn't want to lose momentum during the COVID shutdown of uncertain duration. A small team of education and development staff decided to try out some program formats for Thursday evenings that might start out as virtual offerings as part of our Museum from Home initiative, transition to a hybrid virtual in-person model once it was safe to do so, then finally be offered purely in person as the world found its footing in the new normal. First, we came up with 4 program formats that we wanted to try: coloring, trivia, games, and crafts. Then we thought about what elements we'd want to incorporate into each program. Those included an experience. We wanted each virtual program to have a cohesive theme, with each element contributing to an overall experience for participants. Asheville is known not only for its burgeoning culinary scene, but also for the outsized ratio of breweries, cideries, distilleries, and wineries per capita. Great food and drinks are a way of life here. So we decided that each virtual program would feature a beverage that was related to the theme and showcase the wide variety of craft producers that Asheville is known for. In our small community, most everything is enriched through partnerships with individuals, small businesses, nonprofits, and more. Some of our regular partners and favorite local businesses, like us, were suffering unimaginable losses due to the pandemic, so we wanted to use our platform however we could to draw attention to everything our community has to offer. We wanted all Third Thursday programs to be lighthearted, fun opportunities for socialization and learning related to our collections and exhibitions. And finally, we wanted anything that we offered via virtual Third Thursdays to be replicable or adaptable to an in-person experience in a post-COVID world. Our limited financial and human resources have taught us to be thoughtful about program design and allocation of staff time and energy. One big challenge that we faced in developing Third Thursday programming from the start was our staff's inexperience with virtual programming. Before COVID, we offered most programs in person and on site, with some outreach to pre-K through 12 classroom and adult audiences, but we didn't offer any virtual programs. so we didn't already have in-house expertise in distance learning or online program production. As an institution with a relatively low budget for the scope, size, and scale of exhibitions, programming, and staff size, we were also tasked with limiting expenses to a bare minimum. Fresh in our memories, though, were lessons learned during the previous 3 years of construction and alternate means of offering programs in spaces not our own with the support of community partners. Armed with one Zoom Pro license, varying comfort levels with technology, and a cultivated spirit of experimentation and making do, our pivot was perhaps quicker and less painful than it might have been for institutions with strongly established ways of working. Quickly, I'd like to go through a few of these Third Thursdays so that you can get a feel for the program. Recordings are archived on the museum's YouTube page, so if you'd like to see how any of them worked, head over to ashevilleart.org/museumfromhome and follow the link to videos on our YouTube page. Our first Third Thursday was a program called Coloring and Cocktails. One of our exhibitions at the time was A Telling Instinct, John James Audubon in Contemporary Art, which featured animals and works in all media. We played with that idea with animal-themed cocktails such as the bee's knees and the salty dog, mixed up from home by a popular local bartender who had been furloughed. Recipes were posted on our website and ingredients available for curbside pickup at a local distillery, one of our community partners, for folks to make their own cocktails at home. As luck would have it, one of the exhibition artists had just published a coloring book, so she granted us permission to email out a couple of pages for participants to use, or participants could pick up a copy of the book from our museum store curbside. Our associate curator interviewed the featured artist, who's based in California, for about 20 minutes about how animals played a pivotal role in her work. To give participants leisure time to color, the Asheville Symphony introduced and streamed about 30 minutes of curated animal-themed classical music. We spotlighted the featured artist's camera during the music, and she worked on a monumental scale drawing in her studio as participants watched and colored. At the end of the program, everyone turned on their cameras and shared their coloring in progress to foster a sense of togetherness even while we were apart. All of these program elements fit into the basic functions of Zoom and would be easily replicable in person later on. Our second program model was Artful Trivia. Our geeky staff loves participating in area trivia nights, so this was a natural fit for us. Owing to the historical importance of arts and crafts in our museum's mission and to the contemporary draw of craft food and drink in Western North Carolina, we decided to theme our first trivia night around American art, craft, and beer. Our staff wrote 4 rounds of original trivia related to this theme, including a visual round, we are an art museum after all, and planned breaks in between rounds. One break was hosted by a local brewery who not only had released a beer in honor of the museum's grand reopening in November 2019, but also that's known for its artist-created can designs. The brewery's artist, who's based in Wisconsin, talked about his process of designing can art from concept to completion. The second break was hosted by our associate curator, who spoke briefly about bar-themed items from the museum's collection. The third break was hosted by a local glassmaker whose work had recently been on view in one of our exhibitions. He blew a pint glass in his hot shop live on air, and at the end of the program opened the annealer to show us the final product. Participants were invited to pick up the brewery's products before the program and to shop online at the artist's website afterwards. Artful Trivia was one of the trickiest for our staff to figure out technically because we weren't sure how best to collect trivia answers. We'd attended other programs where colleagues used a third-party trivia collector or had participants email responses after each round. In the end, we decided to use Zoom's polls feature so that participants could answer in Zoom in real time. The only drawback to this method was that you can't get a report of poll results until after the program, so we couldn't announce the winners until the next day, but no one seemed to mind. All in all, most of these program elements would be fairly easy to replicate for in-person trivia later on. The third program model was a game night. We knew that a game night would be easy to implement in person, but because games are usually interactive for multiple players, game night in the virtual realm was the hardest for us to conceptualize technically. So we decided not to play a game per se, but to look at the history and art of games. Our beverage partner was a local ginger beer brewer who embraces a very playful aesthetic in its branding. We also like the idea that ginger beer isn't quite what it seems and that it can be mixed in a lot of ways. Cocktail and mocktail recipes were posted on our website in advance with instructions for curbside pickup at the brewery for participants. Our program partner was a local board game cafe. One of their staff explored the history and artistry of card games, and then their game master talked about designing new card games using one he'd recently launched on GoFundMe as reference. The program was complemented by our assistant curator, who gave a short presentation about game-related or game-inspired art in our collection, as well as virtual puzzles and a word search related to our collection that we posted online ahead of time. All of the program elements from this virtual game night fit into the basic functions of Zoom, but ultimately we decided that this program type would best be suited to in-person programming later on and offered the first in-person game night once we were allowed to reopen in the fall. The fourth and final program model we tried for Third Thursdays was a Bring Your Own Craft Night. We at the museum collect and integrate craft into our galleries as a matter of course. Western North Carolina is a historical and contemporary hub of crafts in a variety of media, and most museum staff are crafters or artists of some kind. The idea behind this program was akin to craft in public events. So while the program was underway, participants were invited to work on their own craft at home to share at the end of the program. Our featured craft for this first program was knitting. So inspired by countless stitch nights with friends, we started the program with a virtual wine tasting with a local craft vintner who had prepared kits for participants to pick up before the program. We also partnered with a local gallery to interview an artist that they represent and who's featured in our collection, who knits with glass. We'd not been able to bring this artist for a talk before since she's based in Washington State, so we're thrilled for the opportunity to Zoom with her. Following the artist's interview, we were joined by the owners of a local yarn store who had partnered with us in the past for Knit in Public Days, and they gave a short presentation on craftivism. They too had put together yarn bombing kits for participants to pick up before or after the program. At the end, participants turned on their cameras and shared what they'd been working on during the program. All of these program elements from the Bring Your Own Craft Night fit into the basic functions of Zoom with endless options for future featured crafts and community partners. For all of these Third Thursday programs that I've gone through, the museum's cafe designed a takeout pickup menu for family-style dining options available for pre-order, with pickup available the day of the program. To date, we've hosted 3 coloring and cocktails programs, 2 Artful Trivia nights, 2 game nights, and 1 Bring Your Own Craft night. Since we reopened in September, staff has looked for ways to hybridize Third Thursdays in order to respect our members' and visitors' comfort levels venturing out during the pandemic. For example, for our second Artful Trivia night, while virtual participants watched and participated at home as before through Zoom and its polls feature, we moved a flat screen TV into our rooftop cafe for on-site participants to enjoy the program and score sheets for them to hand in to staff at the end of each round. Another example is, for our most recent coloring and cocktails program, we invited our guest bartender to mix drinks all evening in our rooftop cafe and to live stream her program segment on site. Again, we had a flat screen TV in the cafe for on-site participants to listen to the music and artist interview, and left coloring sheets and color pencils on the tables to enjoy during the program. Third Thursdays are currently on a brief hiatus as we set our sights on safe ways to transition the program wholly in-house. For us, our integration of virtual programs has come with many silver linings. We've grown awareness of the museum, our collection and exhibitions, and educational offerings, and in so doing have cultivated new members from around the state, country, and even around the world. We've been able to feature artists, musicians, scholars, and other special guests from across the state, country, and internationally that we may not have been able to support in person due to limited program budgets for honoraria and travel expenses. We post recordings of most virtual programs for visitors from near and far to enjoy after the live broadcast. The recordings are accessed regularly, making for longer lasting educational resources for adults. Virtual participants register through our website in advance using our e-commerce platform, allowing us to ticket some programs and to collect voluntary donations for free programs. Online reservations also help us to capture email addresses and other information for all participants, allowing us to send follow-up evaluations after each program and to tweak our program design accordingly in a timely manner, and to grow our email list to advertise future programs. We can serve museum members and visitors with mobility issues, transportation barriers, or partial year residents who can now engage with us from wherever they are. And finally, we archive recordings on YouTube, which builds in extra accessibility features like closed captioning at no cost to us. Every virtual program that we've delivered over the past 13 months has been a learning experience for our staff, especially these Third Thursdays that have so many moving parts and featured guests spread out across the country with varying levels of experience with technology. Some tips that I'd give to other museum staff implementing virtual programs are: embrace a platform and learn all about it. Whether it's GoToMeeting, Zoom, Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, or another platform, they all have their pros and cons, bells and whistles. We went with Zoom and spent a good amount of time watching tutorials in order to figure out how to push Zoom to its limits to get the results that we wanted. Make a detailed script or run of show for all virtual programs. This helps the program to run smoothly. Include stage directions like change slide, mute participants, or share screen, and approximate timing to keep yourself and your team on track. Program participants are expecting a seamless, tech-savvy experience, whether those skills were previously in our wheelhouse or not. Build redundancy into the production. We always have at least 2 staff members producing a virtual program, and sometimes more if it's heavy on moving parts like Third Thursdays. Divide up responsibilities like letting ticketed participants in from the waiting room, muting or unmuting featured guests, sharing or unsharing screens, changing slides, launching polls, dividing the group into breakout rooms, keeping track of the chat box, etc. It's also good for your production partner to have a second copy of slides, videos, scripts, etc. on their screen ready to go in case your computer decides to restart, if your video or microphone stops working, or as what happened to me last summer, we had an unexpected fire drill at the museum and I, as the host, had to leave my office altogether in the middle of the program. That detailed script allows for your production partner to pick up right where you left off without any interruption to the program on the front end. And finally, schedule pre-programmed tech checks or run-throughs with all presenters and production partners. Since folks have varying skills using online platforms, tech skills, time zone differences, and to make sure that all technical elements of your virtual program are working, it's important for everyone to be on the same page about program content and expectations. It's much easier to troubleshoot issues with a day or two's notice rather than just before or during the program. Third Thursdays have been a welcome source of delight, fun, respite, fellowship, and creativity in these challenging times. Our staff and featured guests have been open-minded and always willing to step outside of their comfort zones to explore opportunities in this rapidly changing world. We've been incredibly lucky for the generous support of Art Bridges, a foundation whose belief in empowering small to mid-sized art institutions like ours allowed us not only to invest in simple technology to quickly pivot to our Museum from Home initiative, but also to compensate our featured guests. We look forward to integrating virtual programs permanently into our portfolio of educational offerings as on-site visitation picks up and as we slowly resume in-person programs. Thank you again for inviting me to talk about the Asheville Art Museum's Third Thursday program. I'd be happy to field any questions during Q&A today or offline.
Okay. Well, thank you, Christie and Ross. That was terrific. Boy, this is really what it's all about in the museum field. We really rise to the occasion with great creativity, I think. So everybody on participating in this, bring your questions into the chat and we will field them. I'm going to start with sort of a 30,000-foot question, though. Because museums are known to think things to death and plan and strategize and all that kind of thing, and we had to sort of move quickly in this instance. How did you actually do the so-called pivot? Did you build a certain strategy into it? Did you sort of identify audiences? Did you do a strategic framework, or was it just by the seat of the pants?
Ross, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, sure. I think. I guess there's two ways to answer that question. I think the one is that we didn't have a plan because we didn't know what to expect. So I think we closed down super quickly. I think I came into work on a Friday, and then I came in, I think, that Monday, and then Tuesday, it was like, you have to get off of campus because we were at a university campus. So, and then all of a sudden we were gone. So I was literally going around closing up stuff, and we weren't sure when we were going to be back. And of course, like our building is 150-year-old building. So it needs constant attention in the way that an old house does. Like, it has an attic, it has a basement that floods, it has walls that crumble, it has, HVAC issues. And so not being there is very challenging because we have to, because we don't know the sense of the building. So we had no plan. We had no plan that allowed us to be there, and we couldn't be on site. But what is true is that the partners we put together to kind of reinterpret our virtual programs and provide access to our public tours were relationships that we'd already built, which was really great. So the libraries that we're working with are all libraries that were on kind of the 2 or 4 year kind of Chicago, Illinois suffrage conversation that our director at the time had been, tapping in and out of for many months. And so those partnerships we already had really worked really well. The funding we received from the Terra Foundation that helped us kind of build and edit videos that we had previously recorded was super important, and that was really based on a previous relationship. So I think for us, our strategic plan was kind of like back behind us because we had built those strong relationships already and then leveraged them for this particular moment. And if we hadn't had those relationships, I don't think we would have fared too well. We probably would have spent more money that we didn't have. Our staff is super small. So we also didn't have the funds to actually pay the persons we wanted to invite to speak at these events. So without those relationships, I think we would have been in a tough spot. So yeah, no strategic plan, relied on relationships that we already had to pivot quickly to make things happen, I think. Yeah.
Good. Christie? Yeah.
I would agree with Ross. All of those relationships that we had before in partnerships with community organizations were really important. Also, we, as I had said, we had just reopened in November 2019 after 3 years of construction and then had to close again in March 2020, which was just so heartbreaking. But I think that, as I said, we had this sort of already ingrained quality of making do and being sort of out in the community and putting on our programs, even if we didn't have a building. So we had already learned sort of not to rely on a building. We talked with our docents about, how could we leverage their skills in order to have public programs, whether they were online or not. And, everybody sort of had a willingness to try, and we were able to incorporate not only this Third Thursday program that I talked about today, but we have a Slow Art Friday program. We transitioned our artist talks to online. We have all sorts of things. Our summer art camp became sort of a hybrid where our team said, okay, what can we do? And so it was just honestly, as I said, it probably wasn't as hard for us as it was for others, because we were just so used to being in that mode of experimentation. And sort of at the height of the summer, we were doing between, I think, 3 to 5 virtual programs per week. And now I think probably like most museums, we're seeing some attrition in registrations and people wanting to do things on site, or some people still don't feel comfortable. So now we're in this mode of having some virtual programs, some programs that are small group in-person programs, and, just continuing to sort of maintain both and seeing where that goes.
So we saw, Christie, you had the silver linings slide, and I guess it raises a general question about, the metrics that y'all are using to, to sort of measure things. Do you get a sense of like how many people actually participated in these live streamed events versus, say, what you would have ordinarily gotten at an event on site? Is that an issue? Are you basing it, is it a success based on numbers? A lot of people are trying to figure out, how do you monetize these things? Is that, been a measure? What are the things you're looking at to say, yeah, this worked or it didn't work?
Honestly, we've had probably just as much virtual participation as we had on-site participation per program type. And we offered all of our programs, can't say all, most of our virtual programs were completely free through the summer. In the fall, anything that had been free before, we had a suggested donation. But of course, if someone still couldn't afford to participate, to make a donation, they were not barred from participating. It was just a suggested donation. And then starting in December, we started to have some virtual programs that were ticketed. So we used the waiting room function of Zoom, cross-check the people that had purchased a ticket, and then letting them into the program.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in terms of our audience, I think we had an enormous growth in our public programs, and I think that was partly due because they were focused on like suffrage and the election, and they were meant to be kind of on top of the kind of national conversation. But our space only holds as many as 80 people on site. But our fall programs, we would have 130 people in a Zoom room, 500 people in a Zoom room, things like that, which is really remarkable. And so I think we saw growth. I don't expect that to be the case necessarily in the future. I think we were just on the pulse of something. But what is true is we reached audiences that we just wouldn't be in touch with otherwise. And then there are audiences who want these kinds of dialogues around race and democracy and whatnot, but don't have access to them where they are. And so I think we picked up that audiences as well. And generally, we're a smaller museum. I think we're both physically small, and then our audience isn't super big. So this represented a larger growth than we would be able to achieve like on our own and with our own space, especially per program.
Is it safe to say that both of you feel confident you're going to be able to retain those new audiences that have come, whether they're outside your particular region or otherwise? You think you might be able to continue programming that'll keep those folks in the fold, or is this just a pandemic thing?
I don't know about you, Ross, but we fully intend to keep some virtual programs in our lineup. It's been really eye-opening because, as I said, we before most of our programs were in person and on site, and so this is really sort of transformational for the way that we're offering our programs. And I have to say, Dan, some of the folks that are joining us from outside of the Western North Carolina are the most loyal program participants. Some of them come to everything we put on. And so they are saying, please keep offering these programs. We really enjoy them. We love the content. We love learning about things that we weren't necessarily learning about in our own communities. And so, we will adjust the frequency, I think, according to, how much people are signing up to participate in those programs. But I don't envision a time now. It's hard to envision us not having these virtual programs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll agree with that too. I think it's less about kind of what we want to do and more about wanting to or retaining the audience as much as it's about that we've gained audiences that hold an expectation that they have access to our site now in a way that they wouldn't before. And so I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. I think all the planning we're doing now is for, well, how can we make this program hybrid, both for like families, our family programs, and both for our kind of more adult oriented stuff. And so I don't know how we're going to go back. And that's kind of the open question I have around this is, is there going to be new kinds of funding for these hybrid models that can help us support it going forward, in my institution to make these transitions. Everybody has like one Zoom account now, right? So, but that platform is super limited. And I'm excited to see like where the funding and strategies come from to kind of help museums really tap into their broader audiences and also connect to each other. Like I'm excited, to be at the virtual conferences because it does give our team insight into what other organizations are doing that we wouldn't necessarily be on our radar as well. So,
yeah. Well, it's a good point. I think that doing what you're doing and what we're doing and sort of showcasing this stuff is the argument for future funding because this is in fact here to stay. All right, so I've got some questions. It looks like in the chat, folks. How do you guys keep from freaking out over the technology? I mean, the technology. You just mentioned that now all of a sudden you're handling 500 people in a session, and we talked a little bit about, and we all know the vagaries of Zoom, and Christie had to leave because of the fire drill. Like how do you actually maintain, sort of the technological standpoint, but then also just your own, sort of personal bandwidth for this stuff?
For us, as I said, we sort of chose a platform and stuck to it. And that way we could sort of learn how to make Zoom work for us, even as they, over the course of April, May, June, sort of made a lot of changes and improvements to their platform. They weren't expecting such a huge flux of people using their platform, but using the tutorials to find out, if there was something I wanted to do that I didn't know how to do, making use of their tutorials to teach myself how to do it. And it's really important, as I was saying, to have the script that sort of tells me everything that I need to do, muting people, making them co-host, letting them share their screen, unmuting, whatever, and to have that program partner sort of behind the scenes at the museum to help make sure that the program stays on track so that I've been in a program before where my microphone just stopped working and nobody could hear me. And so I needed to restart my computer. So by having a program production partner there helping, I could sort of make that person host. She could pick up exactly where I left off. Then I could log off, restart my computer, and everything could go well. It's very nerve-wracking when you're in the middle of a live programming. But hey, these are the times that we live in, and we all are just doing the best we can. And I think that our virtual visitors understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll echo all of that. I showed that partner slide because I just wanted to kind of iterate like what it took for us to launch. And I think that was half the programming that we ultimately did. But it was a lot of people involved just to do our normal stuff, right? And I think you have to think of it really as the same way as an on-site program in some ways, where an on-site program involves basically almost all our staff greeting, checking people in, checking on the food and catering. We always have someone who's like just dealing with the microphones, both the ones someone's presenting from and both the ones that are in the crowd. And then we normally on our on-site programs will have a videographer and a photographer on site who are working together to record the program. And frankly, it's the same. You have to have a similar setup with the Zoom stuff. And I think having a partner, like at least one other person, I think, we absolutely did that. We had someone else who was just in charge of like audience questions and a moderator. So really dividing up all those things, I think it really, really helps. And making advocating, like if you, depending on what level you are in staffing, I think a lot of the kind of program people and the assistant folks often have to be advocating up to their higher ups to get that extra kind of support. But it's just critically needed. So I just think that advocacy is important. Doing the Zoom tutorials is really helpful. I did a bunch of those as well. But you just have to bring in other people. That's like the thing to do. You got to bring in other people. You can't do it alone. And everybody's scared.
Thank you so much, both of you. Unfortunately, we're out of time, folks. Thank you again, Christie and Ross, for your expertise, your experiences, and your wisdom on this subject. And thank you, everybody, for participating today and your questions. Before we go, I have a couple of housekeeping items. Don't forget to visit the forum on the Museum Learning Hub website to ask any additional questions related to this presentation or others. Finally, for the first technical workshop of Module 2, which is entitled Intro to Live Streaming, with David London, the Chief Experience Officer of the Peel Center in Baltimore, which is going to be a terrific presentation to get down into the weeds of actually how to do it. Thanks again, Ross and Christie, and thanks everybody for attending today. May you be safe, may you be well, and have a fabulous day. Thank you.